Father in heaven, thank you again for the time we spent together here today, Lord, studying subjects that are touching our hearts. Father, we sense that so much is happening in the world, and we want to make sure that we have our eyes open. The time is coming, Lord, when we won't be able to do this, when we're going to be hiding and we're going to be meeting in secret, as so many people in other countries are doing right now, in China and Africa and other countries where they don't have the freedom of religion that we have here. And I'm sure at that time we're going to wish we had studied more. But everybody's so busy today. We have so many issues going. The devil has worked things out that we hardly have time to spend with you, Father. So we thank you for this Sabbath, for allowing us to know about this day. Father, I just pray that you might give us again the strength to sit. It's so easy for me to be up here while I'm talking, but it's hard to sit down and just listen and not doze off. Thank you for this great food. Thank you for this great number of people that have shown up. Thank you for your people, Father. We are perishing for lack of knowledge, and our camp meetings have been discontinued, hardly going on. We don't have, like it was 30 years ago, where prophecy was proclaimed. There's so much that we need as your people to be ready for what's coming. Father, help us, I pray, to be able to share with others what we know. Where would we be if somebody had not shared it with us? Please let your angels and your Holy Spirit come and talk to us, Father. Help me to be able to share what you would want me to share. Thank you for your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, what if we are tied and forced to accept this so-called mark? Will God hold us responsible? And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. This has to be in the future. This has not happened yet, right? Now, if it's in the future, because it's never happened, and we're talking a day for a year, we're talking 1,260 years. Does anybody believe we could go 1,260 years? So this has got to be literal time. It's the only way that you can look at it, or you're going to have it a little clearer. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given over all kindreds and tongues and nations. What is the main goal of the little horn? To take away the daily. Lot of concern about the daily. Lot of confusion. Lot of different ideas on the daily. The daily, what is it? And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and a host was given him against the daily sacrifice. Please notice that the word sacrifice is italicized. Check your Bibles. Then I saw in relation to the daily, Daniel 8:12, that the word sacrifice was supplied by man's wisdom and does not belong to the text. So you should take it and scratch it off in your Bible. Just put a line so you won't forget it. We're talking about, and by him the daily was taken away. Has nothing to do with sacrifice. Unfortunately, this is because of the warnings of Daniel 12, because of the timelines of 1260, 1290, and 1335 days of Daniel 12, because they all kick off with the daily. For 1,000 years, people have been wondering. So they couldn't figure out what it was. So they say, well, it must be sacrifice. But it's not sacrifice. We're not sacrificing right now. I now ask that my ministering brethren shall not make use of my writings in their arguments regarding this question, the daily. For I have had no instruction on the point under discussion, and I see no need for the controversy regarding this matter. Under present conditions, silence is eloquence. This was in 1910. She's saying regarding this matter, obviously the Lord said, look, it's not a big deal. Even though you don't know it, Ellen, it's not going to happen now, so it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal to us now for the simple reason that Daniel 12 kicks off from the daily. The main goal of the little horn is to take away the daily. But what is the main thing that happens that kicks off so many different prophecies in the Bible? That's the daily. The daily is mentioned 5 times in chapter 8, 11, and 12. Strong's Concordance assigns number 8548 to all 5 references. Its original meaning is perpetual. Daniel calls the daily the Holy Covenant in Daniel 11:30-32. Moses called the Sabbath the perpetual covenant. The Lord declares, I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctified them. When the Sabbath, the perpetual covenant between God and his people, is removed by a Sunday law, the daily shall be taken away. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. Everything kicks off with the Sunday law. We've known that for years. So if the daily is what kicks off the final timelines in Earth's history, it's got to be that. It is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. Psalm 119, 126. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burnt, and few men left. Ordinance. Strong's 2706. It is a statute. We have not studied about statutes. Powerful study. Can't get to it today. But it's a powerful study. I assure you, you would be amazed at what's there. The lack of understanding of what a statute is. Tithing is a statute. It's not an ordinance. The statutes of God are part of his moral law. The health laws are statutes. This is all in the Bible, and we can cover it if we get to it. Drinking alcohol, it's a statute. It says it's a statute. The prohibition against eating fat and grease is a statute. All these things are statute. The sabbatical year, every 7 years you let the land rest, it's a statute. The Jubilee, it's a statute. These are all statutes. So basically here, it would say, change the statute, broken the everlasting covenant. Everlasting covenant, perpetual covenant, Exodus 31:6, daily taken away, national Sunday law in America. Hallowed by the Creator's rest and blessing, the Sabbath was kept by Adam in his innocence in holy Eden. By Adam, fallen yet repentant, when he was driven from his happy estate. It was kept by all the patriarchs, from Abel to righteous Noah, to Abraham, to Jacob. When the chosen people were in bondage in Egypt, many in the midst of prevailing idolatry lost their knowledge of God's law. But when the Lord delivered Israel, he proclaimed this law in awful grandeur to the assembled multitude, that they might know his will and fear and obey him forever. From that day to the present, the knowledge of God's law has been preserved in the earth, and the Sabbath of the 4th commandment has been kept. Though the man of sin succeeded in trampling underfoot God's holy day, yet even in the period of his supremacy, there were hidden in secret places faithful souls who paid it honor. Since the Reformation, there have been some in every generation to maintain its observance. Though often in the midst of reproach and persecution, a constant testimony has been borne to the perpetuity of the law of God and the sacred obligation of the creation Sabbath. Its original meaning is perpetual, perpetuity of the law of God. These are little things that you put them together and you realize where we are. By the decree enforcing the institution of the papacy in violation of the law of God, our nation will disconnect herself fully from righteousness. So we are still connected. God still looks over America, but a time is coming when he won't. Then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous workings of Satan and that the end is near. That's going to be scary. Right now, he's just playing games with us. At that time, the marvelous workings of Satan, you're talking false miracles. You're talking people being healed. You're talking fire from heaven. You're talking the apparition of Satan. You're talking unbelievable things that, if possible, they're going to deceive the very elect. As the approach of the Roman armies was assigned to the disciples of the impending destruction of Jerusalem, so may this apostasy be assigned to us, that the limit of God's forbearance is reached, that the measure of our nation's iniquity is full, and that the angel of mercy is about to take her flight, never to return from America. That's scary. The people of God will then be plunged into those scenes of affliction and distress which prophets have described as a time of Jacob's trouble. Now, when you go to the book Early Writings, and I wish I had time to cover it, but we don't, there is a time of Jacob's trouble, and there is a little time of trouble. Jacob's trouble is very short, but is very bad. The little time of trouble is very long, but is not so bad. So when the National Sunday Law, or just before the National Sunday Law, actually when the National Sunday Law kicks into place, the little time of trouble commences. Ellen White told us it's good for you to live in the country, for the problem of buying and selling will be a difficult one. We're supposed to get ready for that time. And then after probation closes and the plagues commence, right at the end, then that's when the Jacob's time of trouble commences. Okay? There came up among them another little horn. I beheld the same horn, made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and think to change times and laws. Constantine the Great, first Sunday Law. First Sunday Law enacted in 321 AD. This may be how it starts in America. On the venerable day of the sun, that was the Sunday Law, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits. Why? Because we needed food. So we're going to make an exception for those people, right? Because it often happens that another day is not so suitable for grain sowing, for vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. So they made some exceptions. They may make a law now saying, hey, it may start slowly, and teeth may be added to it. Hospitals may be open. Doctors may be able to perform operations, etc. But after a while, it's going to get down to the real thing. The little horn attempted to change God's law by instituting the first universal Sunday law during the Council of Laodicea in the year AD 364. It read thus: Christians shall not Judaize and be idle on Saturday, but shall work on that day. But the Lord's day they shall specially honor, and being Christians shall, if possible, do no work on that day. If, however, they are found Judaizing, they shall be shut out from Christ. Judaizing. Now, imagine, we know what's coming. They have no clue what's coming, the Jews. Who are the first ones that are going to get hit when this Sunday law comes? The Jews. You guys are the ones that created the Saturday in the first place. You're the ones that are going to get it. And they're going to get hit, and they have no clue what is coming. So, and there's some studies, tremendous studies in Zechariah especially, where it says that all of the nations of the earth are going to be united against Jerusalem. This is a very important study in Zechariah. Maybe we'll get to it. Will the little horn attempt to change God's law again and persecute God's people? Daniel 11:30. He shall be grieved and returned, and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Who are the ones that have the holy covenant today?
Us.
Huh? Us?
Us? Yes.
Right? Give this some thought. This is powerful. Give this some thought. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. We're inviting them into our church. They're speaking in conferences. We're marching down with their flags. This is happening. They're having intelligence. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily. This is in 11, Daniel 11. And they that understand shall fall by the sword. Who are they that understand? We. They're going to fall by the sword. According to Revelation 20, verse 4, it says, I saw many were beheaded because they would not worship the mark of the beast. So this is in the future. And they that understand shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. This is not going to be 2 weeks. It's not going to be 2 weeks. And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until the indignation be accomplished. 42 months of persecution. We have no time to lose. Troublous times are before us. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. This is her commentary on Daniel 11:30. The prophecy in the 11th of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history that has taken place in fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Scenes similar to those described in these words will take place. We see evidence that Satan is fast obtaining the control of human minds who have not the fear of God before them. Let all read and understand the prophecies of this book. Daniel 11:41. He shall enter also into the glorious land. What's the glorious land? Israel. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand. Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. And the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again. Holy Land is Jerusalem. We're clear on that. Now, who is Edom? The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. Who are the only ones that will escape the wrath of the papacy?
The ones that escape into the mountains.
Okay, but who are they? The 144,000. At the very end of times, the 144,000, where do they go? Most of them, if they're not in prison or whatever, they are going to dwell in the clefts of the rock. The 144,000 are the only ones that will escape, as the decree issued by the various rulers of Christendom against commandment keepers shall withdraw the protection of government and abandon them to those who desire their destruction. The people of God will flee from the cities and villages and associate together in companies, dwelling in the most desolate and solitary places. Many will find refuge in the strongholds of the mountains. Like the Christians of the Piedmont valleys, they will make the high places of the earth their sanctuaries and will thank God for the munitions of rocks. So now who is Moab and Ammon? There's Moab. Okay, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Those were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Benjamin. The same is the father of the children of Ammon. Again, where were they dwelling? They were dwelling in a cave. These are the only ones that are going to be able to escape. The rest, he's going to have control of the entire world. Pope's visit to the Holy Land, March 2009. Here's the quote again. He shall enter into the glorious Holy Land. Okay? Pope Benedict XVI said Sunday he would visit the Holy Land from May 8th to the 15th in the first papal trip to the area since 2000. In 2000, John Paul II had made I think the first time that he had been there, I may have that quote here, I should have it here, maybe I don't. Revelation 17:10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. The ruling of these kings must take place after the wound was healed in 1929, when Mussolini returned the Vatican back to the Pope, since many more than 5 popes have ruled before the wound was inflicted in 1798. 5 are fallen. Pope Pius XI from 1922 to 1939. Pope Pius XII from 1939 to 1958. Pope John the 23rd, 1958 to 1963. Pope Paul VI, 1963 to 1978. And this guy who just lasted, remember, I think 1 month? Pope John Paul I. Those are the 5 that are fallen. One is John Paul II, 1978 to 2005. Why is this one? One is. He's dead now. Well, because as far as I'm concerned, it was during this time that people started studying that this could be the interpretation of the 7 kings. Laid to rest. They say 2 billion people watched Pope John Paul's funeral on Friday. And all the world wondered after the beast. The other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Pope predicted a short reign to cardinals. Pope Benedict XVI predicted a short reign in comments to cardinals just after his election, and his brother said Wednesday he was worried about the stress the job would put on the 78-year-old pontiff. There's the man right there. The Pope's trip to the Holy Land takes him from places of prayer to political battlegrounds. There may be other trips too for this traveling man who in 91 journeys abroad as pontiff has already logged more miles than all the previous popes combined. How will Pope Benedict XVI surpass Pope John Paul II? What do you think he would have to do? Sunday law. That's one, Sunday law, and I think the other one could be miracles. I don't know. But it was John Paul II that really brought the papacy back into view. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophets, for they are spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. The great work of the gospel is not to close with less manifestation of the power of God than marked this opening. Servants of God with their faces lighted up and shining with holy consecration will hasten from place to place to proclaim the message from heaven. By thousands of voices all over the earth, the warning will be given. Miracles will be wrought, the sick will be healed, and signs and wonders will follow the believers. Satan also works with lying wonders, even bringing down fire from heaven in the sight of men. Thus the inhabitants of the earth will be brought to take their stand. You know, I've had Adventists that have told me that, our church is so dead, and we don't have music, and we don't have people receiving the Holy Spirit, and we don't have healings, and this and that and the other. A time is coming, Mrs. White said, that the apparent healings would bring Seventh-day Adventists to the test. And I have been in those. Before I became an Adventist, I was in one of those groups. And let me tell you, there was a lady one day that went there, and she said, well, they get in groups like this, and they say, well, the Lord tells me that somebody back there is having a pain in their right side. How many people are having pains in their right side? Surely somebody's going to come up, right? And there was a lady that came up, and she had 1 foot longer than the other, 2 inches. And they prayed, and there in front of everybody, we could see the 2 inches grown out. And everybody just went, wow, everybody was praising God and jumping up and this and that and the other. Guess what? 2 weeks later, she came back and she said, my foot's shrunken again. It was just apparent healings, but it will bring Seventh-day Adventists to the test. And many people are going to say, how come this is not happening in our church? So this is not going to be just one church, it's going to be everywhere. I saw that the remnant were not prepared for what is coming upon the earth. Stupidity, like lethargy, seemed to hang upon the minds of most of those who profess to believe that we are having the last message. My accompanying angel cried out with awful solemnity, get ready, get ready, get ready, for the fierce anger of the Lord is soon to come. You go to church today and you have sermons that you say, my goodness, we've come all the way here. And we've gathered all these people. And we get something that you say, why can't we dig into the prophecies? Well, because there may be people there that may not understand, or this and that and the other. And this is not just one church, this is the Baptist church. And, it's happening everywhere. The storm is coming, relentless in its fury. Are we prepared to meet it? Are we one with Christ as he is one with the Father? Christians should be preparing for what is soon to break upon the world as an overwhelming surprise. And this preparation they should make by diligently studying the Word of God and striving to conform their lives to its precepts. The chronology of Daniel 8. Now we go back and pick this up. World applauds Iran's destruction. America, the Great Horn, enacts the National Sunday Law. America, what will it do to be broken? The impending conflict. Satan delights in war, for it excites the worst passions of the soul and then sweeps into eternity its victims steeped in vice and blood. It is his object to incite the nations to war against one another, for he can thus divert the minds of the people from the work of preparation to stand in the day of God. Satan works through the elements also to garner his harvest of unprepared souls. He has studied the secrets of the laboratories of nature, and he uses all his power to control the elements as far as God allows. When he was suffered to afflict Job, how quickly flocks and herds, servant houses, children were swept away, one trouble succeeding another as in a moment. It is God that shields his creatures and hedges them in from the power of the destroyer. But the Christian world have shown contempt for the law of Jehovah. And the Lord will do just what he has declared that he would. He will withdraw his blessings from the earth and remove his protecting care from those who are rebelling against his law and teaching and forcing others to do the same. Satan has control of all whom God does not specially guard. He will favor and prosper some in order to further his own designs, and he will bring trouble upon others and lead men to believe that it is God who is afflicting them. He will bring disease and disaster until populous cities are reduced to ruin and desolation. Do you realize that all the times that we have these natural disasters, which are never mentioned in the news, but I think that's helped break this country more than anything else, because every time they come, it's 25 billion, 40 billion, 3 billion, 5 billion. It's expensive. But do you realize that most of the time, 5 people die, 12 people die, 1,000 die? You know, it could be 250,000 die, but it never happens, very seldom. In accidents and calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations, that's fires, right? California. In fierce tornadoes and terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes, in every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. He sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon both man and beast. The earth mourneth and fadeth away, the haughty people do languish. The earth also is defiled unto the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant. And then the great deceiver will persuade men that those who serve God are causing these evils. It will be declared that men are offending God by the violation of the Sunday Sabbath, that this sin has brought calamities which will not cease until Sunday observance shall be strictly enforced. And that those who present the claims of the fourth commandment, thus destroying reverence for Sunday, are troublers of the people, preventing their restoration to divine favor and temporal prosperity. Where is our temporal prosperity now? You know, 5 years ago, you couldn't preach this. Now we're seeing what's happening to temporal prosperity. We're broke. Yeah. What are we going to have to do to get the economy back? Everybody's asking. Everybody needs it. Communications from the spirits will declare God has sent them to convince the rejectors of Sunday of their error, affirming the laws of the land should be obeyed as the law of God. They will lament the great wickedness in the world and second the testimony of religious leaders that the degraded state of morals is caused by the desecration of Sunday. Those who honor the Bible Sabbath will be denounced as enemies of law and order, as breaking down the moral restraints of society, causing anarchy and corruption, and calling down the judgments of God upon the earth. Their conscientious scruples will be pronounced obstinacy, stubbornness, and contempt of authority. They will be accused of disaffection toward the government. Ministers who deny the obligation of the divine law will present from the pulpit the duty of yielding obedience to the civil authorities as ordained of God. In legislative halls and courts of justice, commandment keepers will be misrepresented and condemned. A false coloring will be given to their words. The dignitaries of church and state will unite to bribe, persuade, or compel all classes to honor Sunday. The lack of divine authority will be supplied by oppressive enactments. Political corruption, do we see that? Is destroying love of justice and regard for truth, and even in free America, rulers and legislators, in order to secure public favor, so the public is going to want it, right? The people are going to be saying, hey, Congressman, you better vote for this law, because if not, I'm not going to vote for you. In order to secure public favor, we'll yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance. Liberty of conscience, which has cost so great a sacrifice, will no longer be respected. Natural disasters will play a major role in the enactment of a national Sunday law. And you know, in the Bible it says, a time is coming when father will be against son, mother against daughter, brother against sister, etc. You know, right now we don't realize it, but when this happens and all these things are happening in the earth, and somebody comes and says, you know, the problem is that you Sabbath keepers are causing this problem, they will turn us in, whether it's a mom or a dad, because when Satan starts taking possession of people, as God withdraws his blessing, these people are not going to be the same people that we know. They're going to be people that are controlled by Satan. And they're going to say, you know what? I've got 3 children at home, and I've got one that's a fanatic, but I'm going to lose this one and myself if I don't turn him in, and they're going to turn you in. And if they know where you are, they're going to turn you in. Roman Catholic principles will be taken under the care and protection of the state. This national apostasy will speedily be followed by national ruin. By the decree enforcing the institution of the papacy in violation of the law of God, our nation will disconnect herself fully from righteousness. When Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when, under the influence of this threefold union, our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make the provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan and that the end is near. Have we? Roman Catholic principles will be taken under the care and protection of the state. Has that happened? Have we stretched our hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of Protestantism? Has every principle of the Constitution? This has still not happening, but it's happening. Okay? Pope urges fast return to sovereignty in Iraq. Bush presents Medal of Freedom to Pontiff after talks at Vatican. President meets with Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi. Tony Blair just became a Catholic. Isn't that unbelievable? Could he have been a Catholic before? Maybe he was. Maybe he was. We're going to study that. We're going to study that. This is what the Jesuits are all about. They go and they infiltrate different churches, different countries, governments. They are in our bodies where we make legislature, and they're there just, this is written, this is prophesied, this is going to happen. It's happening already. Bush meets with Pope at Vatican. John Paul II called for the quick return to sovereignty in Iraq Friday after receiving the Medal of Freedom from President Bush. If this would have happened 20 years ago, they would have said, Bush, what are you doing? You're crazy. When Kennedy was elected, people were going crazy and said, this, you know, how can we be electing John Kennedy in 1963? Look where we are today. Calling the pontiff a devoted servant of God, Bush presented him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award. Friday marked Bush's 3rd meeting with the Pope since he became president. White House welcoming ceremony for Pope Benedict, April 2008, immediately after he became president. Now, he went to see Bush, and he just came to see Obama. The Holy Father and the President discussed a number of topics of common interest, including the respect of dignity of the human person, etc. The wide diversity of belief in the Protestant churches is regarded by many as decisive proof that no effort to secure a forced uniformity can ever be made. But there has been for years in churches of the Protestant faith a strong and growing sentiment in favor of a union based upon common points of doctrine, common interest. You know, you believe in the Virgin. I don't. Okay, let's not talk about that. But we believe in Jesus, right? Let's just talk about Jesus and the love of Jesus. Well, what about, you believe that we can pray for the dead? I don't believe that. Okay, let's not put that common points. Let's just, you know, everybody's going to heaven. All the churches are good. If you love God, you're okay. This is basically what's going on. When the leading churches of the United States, uniting upon such points of doctrines as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce the decrees and to sustain their institutions, then Protestant America will have formed an image of the Roman hierarchy, and the infliction of civil penalties upon dissenters will inevitably result. President Obama, Pope Benedict meet for the first time in Rome, July of this year. Bush nominates Alito for the Supreme Court, 2005. Chief Justice pick. Bush nominates John Roberts to succeed William Rehnquist. By the way, Alito is a Catholic. Okay? John Roberts, he is a Catholic. Roberts' hearing likely to enter religious territory. Practicing Roman Catholic, Roberts. Sotomayor as the Supreme Court's 6th Catholic justice. Where are we going? Out of 9, 6 are now Catholic. That's unbelievable in this country. Catholics on the court. These are them. Non-Catholics. Look at the ages. Non-Catholics, 89 years old, and 76 and 71. Soon to be replaced. So, you know, this is going to be, when the Sunday law comes, they're going to say, yeah, sure. This is it. It's done. Therefore, are the signs beginning to show? Moral signs. Episcopalians elect first openly gay bishop. This body willfully confirming the election of a person sexually active outside of holy matrimony has departed from the historic faith and order of Jesus Christ. May God have mercy on His church. This is what happened when they elected the first gay bishop. Okay? This is 2003. Just 5 years earlier. In 1998, Anglican leaders approved a resolution calling gay sex incompatible with scriptures. Bishops who hold that view believe that allowing Robinson to serve would be a tacit endorsement of ordaining homosexuals. Robinson, a 56-year-old divorced father of 2, has been living with his man, and now it happened. 5 years later, he's approved. Movers haul away 10 commandments. August 27, 2003. I don't know if you remember this judge, Judge Moore in Montgomery, Alabama. He had the 10 commandments in it, and they told him, you can't have the 10 commandments. Why? They're in Congress. We say in God we trust. They're in their dollar bills. No, you can't have it. And boy, he fought, and he fought, and he fought, and they finally hauled the 10 commandments away. Massachusetts court says gay marriage can be denied. Chrissy, you remember this? Gephardt, when he was running for president, he gets his lesbian daughter to get all her friends excited and help him to do the campaign. Unbelievable. You know, he's endorsing that. You know, if you have it, okay, then you have it, but you don't have to endorse it publicly. Chrissy Gephardt, daughter of Gephardt, revealed that she's gay on ABC's Good Morning America. It's growing. And it's a disease, they say. It's not a disease. It's learned behavior. You try it, you like it. You can't do it. And everybody's saying, oh, well, so now, of course, with the internet, people are seeing things on the internet that they've never had access to before, and they say, well, that sounds good, that looks good, let me try it. And it's happening. Sin is multiplying at a rate that it could never have happened before. San Francisco mayor in gay marriage licensing. California legislature approves gay marriage. They became the first in the country to approve a bill. Maine, 5th state to allow gay marriage. Look how they're moving, how quickly, May 6th of 2009. In those days, there was no king in Israel, but every man did which was right in his own eyes. That's what's happening. We're reliving history is being repeated. In an effort to prevent a further moral decline, a constitutional amendment is being proposed. But as was shown to Ellen White, this could very well cause America to repudiate every principle of his constitution, paving the way for a national Sunday law to be enacted, because when you have a constitutional amendment, you can tack things to it. And they could pass a Sunday law and put it as part of that. U.S. Catholic leaders endorsed a constitutional amendment against gay marriage. President Bush calls for a constitutional amendment to define marriage as being only between a man and a woman. This is the only way that some of these states are now being able to fight this, by an amendment. A 2/3 majority of both the House and the Senate needs to pass the amendment. It must be approved by 3/4, 38 of the 50 states. Warning, 1882, a great crisis awaits the people of God. A crisis awaits the world. The most momentous struggle of all the ages is just before us. Events which for more than 40 years we have upon the authority of the prophetic word declared to be impending are now taking place before our eyes. Already the question of an amendment to the Constitution restricting liberty of conscience has been urged upon the legislatures of the nation. This is going to happen. Warning, 1882. There is soon to open before us a period of overwhelming interest to all living. The controversies of the past are to be revived. New controversies will arise. The scenes to be enacted in our world are not even dreamed of. Satan is at work through human agencies. Those who are making an effort to change the Constitution and secure a law enforcing Sunday observance little realize what will be the result. A crisis is just upon us. These people have no idea what they're doing. Those that want to worship on Sunday have no idea what they're doing. They're just following because the priest said, or the pastor said, or the congressman said. And after it happens, they're going to realize what a mistake we've made. Daniel prophesied that the great horn would be broken. Speaking of America, Mrs. White prophesied, said the angel, "Hear, O heavens, the cry of the oppressed, and reward the oppressors double according to their deeds. This nation will yet be humbled into the dust." As soon as we hit Iran, everybody's going to say, wow for America, wow for the United Nations, and national apostasy. We will institute the Sunday law, the whole world will be in our side, and then national apostasy will speedily follow national ruin. So now we fit that part of the puzzle. We're in Daniel 8:9. Now comes national ruin. Financial signs. Are you worried yet? This is back in 2001, before the World Trade Center. Look at this. One spark could ignite a worldwide economic crisis. During the last U.S. recession 10 years ago, so that was in 1991, Europe was in its post-Cold War euphoria, while the Asian economies were the stuff of a miracle. This time around, both the U.S. and German economies are flatlining, while that of Japan continues its slow downward spiral. The Japanese unemployment rate has risen to 5%, while the Nikkei stock market index last week touched lows not seen since 1984. The world's three most powerful engines are out of use. Worry, a small spark can start a huge conflagration. This has already happened. This is 10 years later. Look where we are now. Now comes September 11, the Dow largest point drop ever after September the 11th. So you can't say that it was because 9/11. It was happening before 9/11. Wartime recession. A war is supposed to throw a life preserver to a floundering economy. This one is sinking it. Federal Reserve officials opted to keep U.S. interest rates at 1958 lows, 46-year low. The dollar fell broadly on Tuesday to a new record against the euro, 2004. Oil settles above 61 for the first time ever, 2005. Crude oil surges above 70, August, a month later. Now it went to 145 another month later. That was the record. IBM to cut 13,000 jobs. Delta, Northwest, Pan Am, Eastern. You remember those airlines? They're gone. GM is gone. It's crazy. GM to close 9 plants, lay off 30,000. You're going to see this with GM. That was in 2005. Ford posts record loss. Polls on defense, Bear Stearns bailout, saying, oh, it's okay, I'm convinced that they're going to come out of this situation very strong. They have no idea what they're doing. They're just guessing. These people are guessing. This is such a big monster. Nobody can control it. Nobody knows how to fix it. Only God can fix it. GM posts $15.5 billion loss, third worst in its history. Government seizes Fannie Mae. Lehman failure, Bank of America. Largest bankruptcy filing in U.S. history in 158 years. This company had been around for 158 years. Bailout for AIG. We know all this. Gold takes the biggest one-day leap ever. It is the only thing that's going to hold its value. All the other currencies are going to be are disappearing because they're going to be valueless. And you're going to see what's going to happen soon. We're going to get to that here. WAMU sold off biggest bank failure in U.S. history. Dow plummets. Asian markets nosedive. Bush signs 700 bailout. National debt clock adds a digit to accommodate growing deficit. They had to add a 1 because they couldn't have it anymore. This has been around since, I think, 1989. Let's see, it says it here. So, yeah, deficit since 1989. They've had this board, and now they had to add a digit. GM says it's not headed for bankruptcy. GM plunges below $1, lowest close since 33. Can you imagine the people in GM that worked there for 30 years, that had their life savings, and that all of a sudden everything is gone? You know, I've got a son that's a dentist, and he's telling me that there are dentists that were supposed to retire, and they're not retiring. They've told them, we can't retire now. We've got to work another 5 years because we've lost everything that we had in the stock market. Poor people, these little guys that had, I worked in GE, in General Motors, you know. It's sad. GM has signaled its struggling plan includes no stake for current shareholders. In 40 days, they went through bankruptcy and came out clean as a whistle. But what happened to the little guys that made the company what it was? All wiped out. All wiped out. Scary. GM bankruptcy, end of an era. They said it wasn't going to happen. Budget deficit tops $1 trillion for the first time. This is just a few days ago. Men are needed in different communities to show the people how riches are to be obtained from the soil. The cultivation of land will bring its return. The land boom has cursed this country. Extravagant prices have been paid for lands bought on credit. This is now, guys, right? This is now. Then the land must be cleared and more money is hired. A house to be built calls for more money, and then interest with open mouth swallows up all the profits. Debts accumulate, and then come the closing and failure of banks, and then the foreclosure of mortgages. This is being fulfilled right now in our eyes. Thousands have been turned out of employment. Families lose their little all they borrow, and then have to give up their property and come out penniless. Much money and hard labor have been put into farms bought on credit or inherited with an encumbrance. The occupants lived in hope of becoming real owners, and it might have been so but for the failure of banks throughout the country.
She wrote that in 1894.
1894. Now, let me tell you, this is getting ready to happen. We'll get to it. 1,000 bank failures expected. This is just brand new. In the next 2 years, I think, 1,000 bank failures are expected. The other day, Pat Googled something and said bank failures. And it takes you to a website, and it tells you the FDIC, all the banks that have failed. It was a Sunday, and in Sunday, 4 banks had failed last week. In Sunday. Then it had 8 pages of all the failures of the FDIC going back to 2003. And of the 8 pages, 2.5 were for last year and 2.5 for this year. Greenspan, house prices to drop much lower. Do you think he knew better? Fed chief says it's unclear if economy is headed for recession. Come on. He doesn't know that it's headed for recession? Of course they know. They just don't want to panic us, and they don't tell us the truth. That's what's going on. Home foreclosures hit all-time high in third quarter. Existing home sales plunged to 25-year low. Federal Reserve, home equity falls below 50%. This has never happened in America since I've been here. 45 years now. It's never happened. Worldwide, Dow ends worst week ever. The Dow lost, the worst week that ended July, we saw a 17% drop. And back then, during the Great Depression, there were 6 trading days in a week. So we lost more in this week than they did in 1933, and back then they traded 6 days. The world is on the brink of financial meltdown, the head of the International Monetary Fund said Saturday. We think we have solved this problem. This problem hasn't even started yet. We think we have solved it. Dow dives. The worst financial crisis since the Great Depression has now wiped out 5.5 years of gains on Wall Street. Look at the date, November 2008. In November, we had lost 5.5 years. U.S. government agrees to buy Citigroup. Economy sheds, lowest level on record, cuts rates to lowest level on records. German billionaire kills self over economic crisis. I've got 3 of these guys on slides. Can you imagine killing yourself over billionaire? Now, this is November 2008. 4 months later, recession wipes away decades of gains. Recession and financial fears sent the Dow on Monday to their worst closing level, as the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression has now erased more than a decade's worth of gains on Wall Street, double what it was in November. Unemployment really is at 16.3%. They're saying, you saw that slide that said Japan's got 5% unemployment? Well, we've got 9 here. And they were saying then, wow, that's bad, 5%. But really it's at 16.3% because there's a lot of people that can't look for work anymore. That's what this article says. They can't look for work, so they say, you know what, I give up. And so they move in with mom or with dad or they do whatever, and they're not counted anymore. So it's much higher than they're telling us. Budget deficit, we have this one already. The credit card debt crisis, the next economic domino, March 27th. This is going to be a nightmare. I'm going to tell you what's happening. And I know friends of mine that it's happened to. A year ago in September, you know, this whole thing started. All of a sudden, I'm making $50,000 a year, and my wife is making $50,000. We can make it. All of a sudden, I lose my job. And I can't find work. So what do? Pull out the credit cards, and I start subsisting on credit cards. And that goes on for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. After 6, 7, 8, 9 months, the credit card company says, hey, I'm sorry, you've maxed your limit. You can't do it. And now there are people that are in credit card debt to their ears, and they have no way of making it. What do you think is going to happen to that father and his wife who now have children at home who are hungry, and all of a sudden they can't make ends meet?
They're really the Ocala National Forest, many of them.
It's crazy. But a time is coming when they're going to take to the streets and they're going to say, we've had enough. Crime is going to increase. It's going to get really bad. So this is the next economic domino right here, credit card crisis. A U.S. government rescue for commercial real estate, August of 2009. This is a bigger monster than we've seen. Up to now, here's what has happened. We went to a function in Miami in a hotel called, I think it's called the Icon. I forget what it's called. Brand new hotel. Top-notch hotel, 50 stories high. We're at the top of the hotel, and they just opened 2 weeks ago, and they're giving us a tour. And all of a sudden, we asked the lady, what is your occupancy rate? 15%. And they have built this monster which has to have maybe paying $500,000 a month in interest. And they can't pay for it. Now, you can do that as a developer, no matter how rich you are. You can do that for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months, for 6 months. After 6 or 7 months, it'll take down the developer. Then the bank will take it over. After 4 or 5 months, the bank will take it down. It'll take down the bank. And when all of this commercial real estate starts failing, I don't know about here, well, I'm sure here it's happening too. In Miami, you go downtown, and you see at night, buildings they have 4 or 5 lights, and it's high-rises. They're broke. They can't make ends meet. When that commercial real estate starts failing, this is going to be a real problem. And it tells you here, the $3.5 trillion commercial real estate market is eroding. Defaults are doubling on loans for apartment buildings, office buildings, housing complexes, strip malls, hotels, hospitals, and a staggering amount of loans. You know, we went to see our son in Atlanta. And we usually do, when we go there, we go to the Hilton, to the Hilton, yeah, for the Sunday buffet, Sunday breakfast buffet. And we go there, and this is a great big Marriott. Was it a Marriott? Okay. Okay. A Marriott. And we go there, and all of a sudden, there's no buffet. And I say, what do you mean there's no buffet? You've had a buffet forever. Yeah, but right now, nobody's coming to the buffet, so we had to discontinue it. And you go through the hotel, and it's empty. The rulers of our nations will, by legislative enactment, enforce the Sunday law. The law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land, and national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The money men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain and then sell at greatly increased prices. This means starvation to the poorer classes and will result in a civil war. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation in the cities of America. The whole plan of the New World Order is to disarm America. The rest of the world is disarmed already. Cuba cannot fight off Castro because all they have is broomsticks. England, France, all these countries, they have no way of defending themselves. Americans are a different breed. We're very independent. People are going to fight. People are stockpiling ammunitions and guns. You know what they're doing now? They are now making gunpowder that only lasts 1 year. So even if you're buying ammunition, it won't do you any good. It's unbelievable. They are going to do what they want to do, and you're going to see it in the Pope's encyclical that just came out. He says, disarmament. That's what we need, disarmament. Why? Oh, it would solve all the problems. We won't have people killing each other. We won't have terrorist attacks. Do you think the terrorists are still going to have their guns? Of course they are. We're the only ones that are not going to have it. Not that we believe in guns. I don't. But the rest of the Americans do. Okay. Labor unions. Labor unions, a crisis is looming. This is powerful. This is a real problem. When all of a sudden the labor unions say we're going to strike and we can't get food into these cities where people go to the groceries 5 times a week. Because 100 years ago everybody had their farm. Corn came in and you had to can it and you had corn stacked away. Now today people have no food. What's going to happen when all of a sudden these trucks can come to the city? It's going to be horrible. The time is fast coming when the controlling power of the labor unions will be very oppressive. Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provision. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. We should now begin to heed the instruction given us over and over again. Get out of the cities into rural districts where the houses are not crowded closely together and where you will be free from the interference of the enemies. Why? Because if they hear you singing on Sabbath, they're going to turn you in. The trades unions will be one of the agencies that will bring upon this earth a time of trouble such as has not been since the world began. The work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future which will come upon them with blinding force. Everything in the news today is trade unions. Obama is for trade unions. The hospitals are trade unions. Everybody's pushing. The Pope in his encyclical is saying we need trade unions to protect the workers. This is coming. It's here. A crisis is soon to come in regard to the observance of Sunday, and we are to be careful not to place ourselves where it will be hard for ourselves and our children to keep the Sabbath. Machinists strike down. Boeing, shut down. Philadelphia transfer workers strike. UC labor union strike. I could give you a bunch of these. President Obama takes union side in PLA. This is now a new thing where they're trying to pass a law where contractors would have to employ union workers to bid on jobs. And the contractors are going crazy and they're saying, how can that be? That doesn't sit well with open shop contractors who could be required to pay union wages and dues to work on a project. The generic effect of PLA is discriminating against the vast majority of the contracting industry. Said John Killing, president of the Associated Builders and Contractors. Union wage rules and turf wars between unions can drive up the cost of a project. Construction costs can be 10 to 20% higher, and I think only 16% of the country has unions. The rest don't have unions. And what are we doing? We're pushing for the unions now. Labor union bill raises broader capitalism. For those opposed to the bill, which would make it easier to form unions, the new message was that it would be something. I forget what it was now. Unions to put millions into health debate. Do you see what's going on here? Labor unions trying to shape the nation's health reform debate have poured millions of dollars into the campaign coffers of North Carolina lawmakers in recent years. This is why you have these town halls where Americans are going there, pulling their hair, frustrated, saying we cannot have this health care plan. And you see the government officials voting for it. Why? Because they have received millions of dollars as a result of it. They may have given a trip to, people are being bought off, and we don't understand it. And we're wondering why. Millions of dollars into the health debate. Papal encyclical. This is the AFL-CIO. Papal encyclical. Workers' rights to form unions must be honored. In a new encyclical released yesterday by Pope Benedict XVI, the leader of the Catholic Church discusses the challenges of a global economy. He notes that workers' ability to form a union and bargain is at risk and makes it clear it's a matter of moral imperative to preserve that freedom. Here's what the Pope has to say on the need for workers to have the freedom to form unions. This is from his encyclical. The protection of these workers, partly achieved through appropriate initiatives aimed at their countries of origin, will enable trade unions to demonstrate the authentic ethical and cultural motivations that made it possible for them in a different social and labor context to play a decisive role in development. So it's the unions that have helped us develop. The Church's traditional teaching makes a valid distinction between the respective roles and functions of trade unions and politics. This distinction allows unions to identify civil society as a proper setting for their necessary activity of defending and promoting labor, especially on behalf of exploited and unrepresented workers, whose woeful condition is often ignored by the distracted eye of society. This is another one. In the face of the unrelenting growth of global interdependence, there is a strongly felt need, even in the midst of a global recession, for a reform of the United Nations organization and likewise of economic institutions and international finance, so that the concept of the family of nations can acquire real teeth. Real teeth. To manage the global economy, to revive economies hit by the crisis, to avoid any deterioration of the present crisis and the greater imbalances that would result, to bring about integral and timely disarmament, you see that? Food security and peace, to guarantee the protection of the environment and to regulate migration. For all this, there is urgent need of a true world political authority. Such an authority would have to be regulated by law, right? It's on the law. Such an authority would need to be universally recognized in the whole world, the universal Sunday law, and to be vested with the effective power to ensure security for all, regard for justice, and respect for rights. Obviously, it would have to have the authority to ensure compliance with its decisions from all parties. And who is the only one that can give that authority? The United States. It is the church and state. The Pope speaks quietly, nobody finds out it's the Pope, but it is the United States that says, hey, we got to move forward. While it may be true, or one more quote, while it may be true that development needs the religions and cultures of different people, it is equally true that adequate discernment is needed. Religious freedom does not mean religious indifferentism, nor does it imply that all religions are equal. Discernment is needed. So we can tell you what's good or bad. What did they do in the time of Luther? They prohibited the reading of the Bible. So the masses, the poor people that are ignorant, they can read, they can write, they're going to follow whatever they're told. And that's why they said, have as many children as you can, do this and do that, because this is how they get the votes. So he's saying, not all religions are equal. We have the right religion, but I don't know about yours. That's basically. Discernment is needed regarding the contribution of cultures and religions, especially on the part of those who wield political power, if the social community is to be built up in a spirit of respect for the common good. And this is the last one. Economic activity cannot solve all social problems through the simple application of commercial logic. This needs to be directed towards the pursuit of the common good, for which the political community in particular must also take responsibility. Therefore, it must be borne in mind that grave imbalances are produced when economic action, conceived merely as an engine for wealth creation, is detached from political action conceived as a means of pursuing justice through redistribution. You remember that from Obama and all these speeches? It's redistributing of wealth. This is socialism. It is nobody can buy or sell. It is what's happening by controlling buying and selling. Pope calls for a global authority on economy. Pope Benedict called on Tuesday for a world political authority to manage the global economy and for more government regulation. Parts of the encyclical, titled Charity in Truth, seemed bound to upset free marketers because of its underlying rejection of unbridled capitalism and regulated market forces, which he said had led through destructive abuse of the system and grave deviations and failures. An encyclical is the highest form of papal writing. Benedict said there is an urgent need of a true world political authority. Such an authority would have to be regulated by law. Obviously, it would have to have the authority to ensure compliance. In order to accomplish the Pope's agenda, the first thing needed would have to be a global currency, and this has been prophesied. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. In the past, the way to solve these problems is to change the currency. You change the currency, now the government who owns the currency can say, okay, our debt stays the same, but you're going to get for every $10, you're going to get $1 of the new. And you just lost, 10 times what you had. This is what has happened in many other countries. This is what has been prophesied. It's going to have to happen so that no man might buy or sell. The present financial controversy has been presented to me as one of Satan's masterpieces for these last days. There is a power moving from beneath, which is after the working of the great enemy. I supposed our own people would step softly and move very guardedly and keep themselves aloof from all these new issues in regards to the circulating currency. This is not of the devising of God, the changing of the circulating currency. What will it affect? It will cause a state of things that will bring oppression to the poor and create great distress. It is one of the devil's schemes, and I thought those who believe the truth would not be deceived in the least degree upon this matter. The light given me was, this is the policy Satan has arranged to bring distress. How did she know that in 1913? This is happening. This is getting ready to happen right now. I really, really believe that. United Nations wants new global currency to replace the dollar. This is just 5 days old. The dollar should be replaced with a global currency, the United Nations has said, proposing the biggest overhaul of the world's monetary system since the Second World War. Brand new. A number of countries, including China and Russia, have suggested replacing the dollar as the world's reserve currency. It added that the present system under which the dollar acts as the world's reserve currency should be subject to a wholesale reconsideration. Although a number of countries, including China and Russia, have suggested replacing the dollar as the world's reserve currency, the UNCTAD report is the first time a major multinational institution has posited such a suggestion. Now, in other times, we would say, we don't care. We're not going to change it. But if China says, you change it, we're going to change it. And now, with the situation that we have with debt, it's the best thing that could happen, many of them say. But who's going to take the beating? The little guy. By the way, this man that owns this hotel that I told you in Miami, I have a friend that dines at those high elevations, high circles, and he met with him and he said, You know, a year ago, I was worth $1 billion. If I'm worth 50 million now, he told him already he lost the hotel. He said the bank bought it and the bank lost it. He already told him. The government now has it. And he said, if I'm now worth $50 million, I'm in good shape. So he has lost all of that money. Imagine. I could not sleep past 2 o'clock this morning. During the night session, I was in council. That happened to me yesterday. I was pleading with some families to avail themselves of God's appointed means and get away from the cities to save their children. Some were loitering, making no determined efforts. The angels of mercy harried Lot and his wife and daughters by taking hold of their hands. Had Lot hastened as the Lord desired him to do, his wife would not have become a pillar of salt. Lot had too much of a lingering spirit. Let us not be like him. Those who obey this warning will find a refuge. Let every man be wide awake for himself and to try to save his family. Let him gird himself for the work. God will reveal from point to point what to do next. Lot, trod the plain with unwilling and tardy steps. He had so long associated with evil workers that he could not see his peril until his wife stood on the plain, a pillar of salt forever. Country Living. If you haven't read that little book, you owe it to yourself to get it. You can read it in a night. It is no time now for God's people to be fixing their affections or laying up their treasures in the world. The time is not far distant when, like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. So this is what's happening here. When the decree is passed, it will then be time to leave the large cities, preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. And now, instead of seeking expensive dwellings here, we should be preparing to move to a better country, even a heavenly. Instead of spending our means in self-gratification, we should be studying to economize. The counsel is, and many people are being misled on this, by the way. Many people are being told that the time to leave is, to move to the country is in the National Sunday Law. This is not true. We were told 150 years ago to move to the country. If you want to raise your kids, etc., you move to the country. But when the Sunday Law comes, that's your last opportunity. Now, when the Sunday Law comes, let's read it again because this is the only place where this quote is found. Not in Country Living, it's the actual quote. It's from Testimonies, but they publish it in Country Living. So the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities. That's your last chance. If you don't get out then, you're not going to get out. She has in other places where she says, if you don't hurry up and leave, you won't be able to get out. Preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. So now, I moved out 30 years ago. Not me. I moved out, but I had to go back to Miami, unfortunately, for other reasons. But let's say that I moved out 30 years ago. I'm living in the country. I raised my kids, all of them in the country, all homeschooled, by God's grace. And now it's just Pat and I. Now, let's say that I moved out. I'm living in the country. When the Sunday Law is passed, the counsel is, okay, those of you that did not make that move, get out now. But those of you that are living in the country, begin preparing to leave the smaller ones, for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. The original plan of God for his people, had we been told, because the problem is nobody preaches on this. Nobody wants to touch this with a 10-foot pole. The original plan would have been to live in the country and to have a country home, a secluded home among the mountains. And then when that happened, you could just leave your home in the country, completely debt-free, and move to your secluded home when the things start getting really bad. Now, notice, Ellen White, August 22, in company with my daughters Emma and Mary Kay White, I left Battle Creek for the West, hoping to receive benefit from a change of climate. Though still suffering from the effects of a severe attack of malarial fever, as well as from the shock of my husband's death, I endured the journey better than I had expected. We reached Boulder, Colorado on Thursday, and on the following Sunday left that place by private carriage for our home in the mountains. Here, the clear, cool air and the pure water, fresh from living springs, seemed to promise renewed health and vigor. Where did she live? She lived in Northern California, right? But she had her home in the country, a secluded home in the mountains. Ere long, there will be such strife and confusion in the cities that those who wish to leave will not be able. We must be preparing for these issues. This is the light that has been given me. Parents should get as suitable a place as their means will allow. Though the dwelling may be small, yet there should be land in connection with it that it may be cultivated. God will help His people to find such homes outside the cities. Let everyone take time to consider carefully and not be like the man in the parable who began to build and was not able to finish. Not a move should be made, but that movement and all that it portends are carefully considered, everything weighed. Think candidly, prayerfully, studying the Word with all carefulness and prayerfulness, with mind and heart awake to hear the voice of God. To understand the will of God is a great thing. Do not go in a rush without knowing what you are about. Or for generals, wise and considerate, well-balanced men who will be safe advisors. Don't you think this should be presented to God's people? Yeah. It's crazy. And we've never been told. Let there be nothing done in a disorderly manner, that there shall be great loss or sacrifice made upon property because of ardent, impulsive speeches which stir up an enthusiasm which is not after the order of God. That a victory that was essential to be gained shall, for lack of level-headed moderation and proper contemplation and sound principles and purposes, be turned into a defeat. Now I plead with every soul to look not too strongly and confidently to human counselors, but look most earnestly to God, the one wise in counsel. Submit all your ways and your will to God's ways and to God's will. You know, ardent, impulsive speeches. Oh, brother, I went and I checked out this, and wow, it's a great place. Get it. Well, I don't have time to get it. You know what? Here, it's $10,000. Put it as a deposit and get it from me, sight unseen. Just came back from Alaska. This guy was not a Christian, I don't think, but he was an older gentleman. And I told him I was, coming from Miami, and he said, oh my goodness, I'm retiring in Miami. Just bought a house there. And I said, really? Well, he doesn't know Miami. Miami, you move into an area, and you've got a bunch of Cubans talking Spanish, and an American will feel in some of these places out of place. Oh, I got it at a steal, $50,000. And I said, $50,000? I know what Miami, for $50,000 you can buy a hut in Miami. Well, you know what? Times have changed. A friend of mine called me. He said he was in foreclosure. Sight unseen. I have not seen it. But I'm retiring there. Here's my wife right here. And they were just so excited. I want to learn Latin music, and I want to learn how to dance, and I'm going to retire in Miami. And that guy is going to move into that building, and he's going to walk out the door, and he's going to hear everybody talking in Spanish, and he's going to say, whoa, I'm out of here. But $50,000. I know the area where he said, you know what? The property values in Miami have come down 40% easily. That could have been a $200,000 home. But he has bought it sight unseen. This is what Ellen White is saying. Do your homework. Pray. Ask. Go check. Don't get into a rush. Don't go because a friend has told you. Do it. You see how balanced Ellen White is? You know, I've met people that have moved out, and they have come back a year later, completely heartbroken. What if I have an unbelieving spouse? Proverbs 25:24, 1 Corinthians 7. Read it. If you have an unbelieving spouse, you know what? The Bible tells you. If she's willing to stay with you, or if he's willing to stay with you, hang in there. Hang in there. Okay. By your conduct, by your witness, that spouse can be turned around. But if she doesn't turn around, or if he doesn't turn around, as time is coming when you're going to have to make a decision and you're going to have to move on your own. Notice this. The great work of the gospel is not to close with less manifestation of the power of God than marked its opening. The prophecies which were fulfilled in the outpouring of the former rain at the opening of the gospel are again to be fulfilled in the latter rain at its close. Servants of God with their faces lighted up and shining with holy consecration will hasten from place to place to proclaim the message from heaven. By thousands of voices all over the earth, the warning will be given, miracles will be wrought, the sick will be healed, and signs and wonders will follow the believers. Satan also works with lying wonders, even bringing down fire from heaven in the sight of men. Thus the inhabitants of the earth will be brought to take their stand. The message will be carried not so much by arguments as by the deep conviction of the Spirit of God. This is happening already. I'm meeting with Catholics that are wrestling right now, wondering, I want to know more about God. And you can just feel the Spirit of God moving upon them. And it's not happening with God's people. The arguments have been presented. The seed has been sown. You've lived with that husband, with that wife for 20 years. They have told you, they have ruled you. But now, look what happens. The publications distributed by missionary workers have exerted their influence, yet many whose minds were impressed have been prevented from fully comprehending the truth or from yielding obedience. You're not going to go to church on Sabbath, because I don't go and you're not going to go. I prohibit you from going. And the spouse says, okay, I won't go. And so you're depriving that. But now the rays of light penetrate everywhere. The truth is seen in its clearness. And the honest children of God sever the bonds which have held them. Family connections, church relations are powerless to stay them now. Truth is more precious than all besides. Notwithstanding the agencies combined against the truth, a large number take their stand upon the Lord's side. Ellen White said that a time is coming when people are going to turn against the pastors that have misled them, and they're going to just be vicious with them because they are going to say, you didn't tell me. What if I have no income to purchase a property? Matthew 6:25, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. There are people that are going out there preparing places of refuge. And God knows who's faithful and who's not. Remember the quote? Our heart is deceitful, but God pondereth the hearts. A time is coming when you may be told, you know what, so-and-so needs a place to go. Invite her there, invite him there. God is preparing places of refuge. As the decree issued by the various rulers of Christendom against commandment keepers to withdraw the protection of government and abandon those who desire the destruction, the people of God will flee from cities and villages and associate together in companies, dwelling in the most desolate and solitary places. Many will find a refuge in the strongholds of the mountains. Like the Christians in the Piedmont valleys, they will make the high places of their sanctuaries their strength. The beloved of God passed weary days bound in chains, shut in prison bars, sentenced to slave, apparently left to die of starvation in dark and loathsome dungeons. No human ear is open to hear their moans. No hand is ready to lend them help. Will the Lord forget his people in this trying hour? Did he forget Noah when judgments were visited upon the antediluvian world? Did he forget Lot when fire came down from heaven to consume the cities of the plain? Did he forget Joseph surrounded by idolaters in Egypt? Did he forget Elijah when the oath of Jezebel threatened him with the fate of the prophets of Baal? Did he forget Jeremiah in the dark and dismal pits of his prison house? Did he forget the three worthies in the fiery furnace? You see how many examples we have to encourage us. The Lord has said, he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye. Amen. I saw the saints living the cities and villages and associating together in companies and living in the most solitary places. Angels provided them food and water. When we go to these places, we can't raise food there. These are secluded homes in the mountains. Angels will provide us food and water, while the wicked were suffering from hunger and thirst. During the night, a very impressive scene passed before me. There seemed to be great confusion and the conflict of armies. A messenger from the Lord stood before me and said, call your household. I will lead you. Follow me. He led me down a dark passage through a forest, then through the clefts of mountains, and said, here you are safe. There were others who had been led to this retreat. The heavenly messenger said, the time of trouble has come as a thief in the night. as the Lord warned you, it would come. You know, there are many places where there are caves right now. You know, they're all registered in the registries. So big caves, they know where they are. We can't hide there. But as these earthquakes start coming, the Lord will open up new caves, and that's where God's people are going to go. Here was his source of comfort, and it is for us. He who is imbued with the Spirit of Christ abides in Christ. The blow that is aimed at him falls upon the Savior who surrounds him with his presence. Whatever comes to him comes from Christ. He has no need to resist evil, for Christ is his defense. Nothing can touch him except by our Lord's permission, and all things that are permitted work together for good to them that love God.
Amen.
You know, this is a promise that all of us have to have. If they take away our money, if they take away our house, if they take away our children, if they take away our spouses, as long as they do not take away our faith, as long as we know that no matter what happens to us, if they take away our lives, if we know that immediately afterwards we're going to be resurrected and go to heaven, what do we care? God doesn't value life in this world that much. It's the second life that he wants. This is why he, as a father, can handle millions of Africans starving to death. Because he knows that if they're good, they're going to enjoy heaven for all eternity. If not, he will be completely destroyed. So this is a promise that, to me, has been a real blessing. Anything that comes to me is because God has sent it my way. If not, it wouldn't come, and he'll give me grace to bear it. Natural disasters of unprecedented magnitude will play a major role in the enactment of a national Sunday law. We'll go 10 minutes. This is quick. This is just basically quotes. When the judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. The new Dust Bowls. Farmers are suffering their worst drought disasters in the 1930s. This is 2002, Nebraska. Colorado. Local farmers are suffering through the worst drought in memory. Montana. The summer is the third dry one in a row. Governor Schwarzenegger asked to declare fire emergencies as firefighters prepare for long battles. State fire officials say lightning strikes last weekend sparked 1,000 blazes. Remember we read that in the Great Controversy? Great conflagrations. Satan is hitting us with all he's got. How do you fight that? 1,000 blazes. Flooding hits historic 500-year levels in Iowa. 500-year levels. There shall be signs in the moon and in the stars, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. Ferocious storms hit Southern California. Lightning lit up the region as fast-flowing water turns up streets to rivers Wednesday night. Water swept trash and other debris. In areas where the hail was deep, adults snapped photos and children frolicked. And he sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning and discomfited them. This is one of God's end-time tools to punish the wicked, lightning. Lightning strikes to the north as seen from Signal Hill. Can you imagine getting hit with that? Look at the thickness of that thing. Usually what you see is that right there. Who knows what kind of power that can do? In Los Angeles, hail up to 6 inches deep. Waves in Lake Erie, 16 feet high. Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow? Or hast thou seen the treasures of the hail which I have reserved against the time of trouble? Can you imagine when God turns loose hail and lightning upon the world? Hail pounds Texas Panhandle, the size of baseballs. Can you imagine a hailstorm? A baseball will go right through the roof of your car. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. That's 100 pounds. That's one of the plagues. National Oceanographic Society, record numbers of tornadoes reported during August. Floridians, Ivan. They had Charlie, they had Francis, they had Ivan. I'm selling. In accidents and calamities unseen, great conflagrations, fires, tidal waves, and earthquakes. Look at this. Hurricane Ivan left Granada a wasteland of flattened houses. Monstrous waves. Hurricane Jean pummels Florida. The 4th hurricane in a single season. It had not happened since 1886. San Helen's blast possible within days. It's happening right now. Massive earthquakes batter Southeast Asia. This is the tsunami that took place, 20 feet high, 8.9, 11 countries, 23,000 times as strong as the atomic bomb, 500 miles an hour. How do you prepare for that? If it comes, you can't prepare for it. It's impossible. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Look at the man on this truck. Can you see that man there? You see a blue truck and the man on top? Look at this. Now it's overtaking them. They're freaking out now. They thought it was just, look at the truck. He's finally getting off the truck now. Look at that. Death toll from a massive mudslide in California. California is brutal. I would not want to live there today. Look at that boulder. Can you imagine driving and that monster falling? This is all a mudslide. This is all houses like this, completely covered in mud. Paralyzing snow strands travelers. 20 inches were possible in some places in New England. Relentless snowstorms plaster areas, the worst since 1916. This is happening everywhere. Rain drains Southern California, the worst in a century. Look at that. Look at that house. And the heat wave blamed for 13 Phoenix deaths. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. It's going to get worse. The heat is going to get worse every year. Guatemala to declare community mass graves. 100 communities cut off from the outside world after killer mudslides. Mud flow as much as 15 to 20 feet thick. Look at that. Completely covered. Officials, lethal Asian quake, 30,000 feared dead. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and a howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills. Howl, ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down, and all they that bear silver are cut off. And it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles. What does this tell you? No. Huh? No. A great crashing from the hills is what? Earthquake. Howl ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down. It seems to imply, according to Zephaniah, a large earthquake will precede the final stock market crash and the commencement of the judgment of the living. Search Jerusalem with candles is the judgment of the living. We don't know when it will start, but it seems to be saying that it will be right after a large earthquake. We don't know when the judgment of the living will start. She says nobody knows that. Cruise ship back in New York Harbor after ordeal. 70-foot wave. 965-foot wide ocean liner was sailing back to New York from the Bahamas when a storm pounded the vessel with heavy seas, including a rogue 70-foot wave. Completely came out of nowhere. Look at that. Fires will break out unexpectedly, and no human effort will be able to quench them. The palaces of earth will be swept away in the fury of the flames. Disasters by rail will become more and more frequent. Confusion, collision, and death, a moment's warning, will occur on the great lines of travel. The end is near, probation is closing. Oh, let us seek God while he may be found. On the great lines of travel, right there. Japan train crash. Sri Lanka train hits bus. 4 die in Mississippi train collision. 2 Chinese Air Force fighters crash after mid-air collision. Union Air Traffic Controller not to blame in Hudson River crash just a few days ago. This is coming out every day in the news. But it's getting worse. How did she know that? In those days, they didn't even have airplanes, right? They just had boats. Brazilian officials identify last body in Air France crash. Governor, evacuate New Orleans. Look here. Look at this. There's a pole there. Look at that. Those people have gotten to the last place they could to stay away from drowning. And they couldn't have gotten out. They had no boat, they had nothing. They were just caught there. They will point to calamities on land and sea. to the storms of wind, the floods, the earthquakes, the destruction by fire, as judgments indicating God's displeasure because Sunday is not sacredly observed. These calamities will increase more and more. One disaster will follow close upon the heels of another, and those who make void the law of God will point to the few who are keeping the Sabbath of the fourth commandment as the ones who are bringing wrath upon the world. Sunday laws. Oh, we'll close it with this. It's very short. Sunday laws. As America, the land of religious liberty, shall unite with the papacy in forcing the conscience and compelling men to honor the false Sabbath, the people on every country of the globe will be led to follow her example. When we say, okay, now it's a law, we will make sure that it's a universal Sunday law. Because these Sunday laws have been coming for a long time. You're going to see it now. This is the European community back in 1993. The European community appears poised to impose a mandatory Sunday closing law on its member nations, a move sparked by pressure from an unusual coalition of Roman Catholic Church leaders, German Christian Democrats, and trade unionists. Catholic Church officials who have been lobbying for a Sunday law since the EE was in its infancy were joined by officials from the German Christian Democrats. Party and leaders of German unions argue that the only way to ensure fair competition and trade between countries would be to have a uniform closing law. It remains to be seen whether all the European community nations will agree to adopt a strict Sunday closing policy. The move is certain to run into opposition from Jews, Seventh-day Adventists, and Muslims who observe different days as their Sabbath. When they did this, Britain said, no, we're not going for that. And they fought it and fought it and fought it. Ontario's Sunday shop law, struck down by High Court. They tried to put it, but they shut it down. Chile, the Sundays are sacred. Los domingos son sagrados. 1992. These are people marching in the streets saying, we want Sunday. We're tired of working 7 days a week. Some of these people work 7 days a week. I met one the other day. He works 7 days a week for 4 months at a time. It's crazy. How do they do it? Britain and the European Commission were on a new collision course last week because they didn't want to go. After the cabinet decided to try to block the imposition of a maximum 48 working week and the designation of Sunday as the normal rest day throughout the European community. The government also argues that an obligatory ban on Sunday working would cause offense to a multiracial society such as Britain. The government would neither sign a declaration committing it to accept a single currency. See, they wanted a single currency. This is back in 1991. They never accepted the euro. They're still on their pound. So they took, why? Because they're on our side of the world. Church aims fiscal acts at stores open on Sunday in England. Critics of the ban say the law is nonsense because while Britons can buy beer on a Sunday, they cannot buy Bibles. German workless Sunday for all European community. German plans to make Sunday the official day of rest for the European community's 320 million citizens, closing down all businesses except continuous activity, such as blast furnaces and newspapers, have met unexpected support from other community countries and fierce but lone opposition from Britain. British officials are incensed that the directive is supposedly justified under Article 118A of the Treaty of Rome. You see who's behind this? Of the 12 community countries, 9 shut down most industrial and commercial activities on Sundays. This is in Mexico, 1989. This is in New Jersey. This is in North Dakota. Puerto Rico. I fought this one. They commenced the annulment of the closing law. You know when this happened in Puerto Rico? You know who fought it? The church didn't fight it. It was the Walmarts and the Publix of Puerto Rico that went to court and fought it and fought it and fought it, and they won. They won it. They weren't able to put it into practice. The church didn't say boo about it. Not a word. St. Lucian churches want Sunday to be respected. Now look at this. Governor summons Virginia's legislatures to fix Sundays off mistake. In a proclamation issued Thursday, Warner said the single purpose of the brief and rare remedial session would be considering legislation to reinstate the exceptions to the day of rest laws inadvertently stricken from the books in a bill passed this year. The governor and legislative leaders had been under heavy pressure from business interests for about a week to provide a permanent legislative fix of the oversight after workers statewide had begun notifying their bosses they intended to take the day off. The crisis arose from a Senate bill to delete Virginia's anachronistic blue laws that mandate Sunday closings. It mistakenly repealed long-standing exceptions to a colonial law that banned work on the Sabbath. The error went unnoticed and became law July the 1st. And all of a sudden, the workers started calling, hey, I'm not going to work. Now I have to work on Sunday. And they said, what, are you crazy? And they called the governor, and he had to call all the people from Congress who had gone on recess for an emergency session to, and this is just 3 or 4 years ago. Where was God's church? 4 corporations with extensive operations statewide and the Virginia Chamber of Commerce obtained an emergency temporary injunction Friday that suspends enforcement for 90 days to allow a review of the law. The Democratic governor had resisted calling the Republican-dominated legislature back into session, but relented after House and Senate leaders pledged in writing that the session would last only a few hours and would deal only with the day of rest law. Do you think this was not, you know what they're doing? They're testing the grounds. They're placing it here. How are people going to react? Are we ready? Wow, we're still not ready. Let's try here. Wow, we're still not ready. This is what they're doing. This is Time magazine, and on the 7th day we rested. Maybe those old blue laws weren't so crazy after all. Once upon a time in the dominion of New Heaven, it was illegal to kiss your children on Sunday, or make a bed, or cut your hair, or eat mince pies, or cross a river unless you were a clergyman riding your circuit. If you lived in Connecticut in 1650, there was no mistaking Sunday for just another shopping day. Regardless of whether you'd go to hell for breaking the Sabbath, you could, Sabbath, you could certainly go to jail. Centuries after the sense that Sunday is special is still wired in us, a miniature sabbatical during which to peel off the rest of the week and savor ritual, religious, or otherwise Sunday worship. So this is Time magazine pushing, hey, you know what? We need a Sunday law. We're overworked. We need break. You know that Americans work 400 hours more a year than any other country? That is 10 weeks. We work 10 weeks more than other countries. I got people working in our office that are from Spain. They get 4 weeks vacation a year, mandatory. Got it made. Unbelievable. Okay, look at this. With progress comes, of course, backlash from those who desperately want to preserve the old ways. Mom and pop liquor stores in New York fought to keep the blue laws to have more time with their families. Car dealers in Kansas City pushed for a law to make them close on Sundays so they could have a day off without losing out competition. Chick-fil-A, a chain of more than 1,100 restaurants in 36 states, closes on Sunday. I wonder if that's still applicable. Does anybody know? They still close on Sunday. Isn't that, you know how powerful that guy must be? He must, to close his restaurant on Sundays? Because his founder, Truett Cathy, promises employees time to worship, spend time with family and friends, or just plain rest from the work week. You know, it makes all the sense in the world to have a Sunday law. Well, I would vote for a Sabbath law, right? If we had to work on Saturday, wouldn't you vote for a Sabbath? So they don't have Sabbath. They're saying, you know what? We're tired of working. Pope John Paul even wrote an apostolic letter in defense of Sunday. Bill O'Reilly saying, let's not buy gasoline on Sunday. Let's teach them that we can do it. Bill O'Reilly, of course, is Catholic. Fox News. European bishops back proposed European Union law on Sunday rest. This is just a few months ago. The proposed measure, which would need 394 votes to pass in the European Parliament, would call on member states and institutions to protect Sunday as the weekday of rest in order to improve the protection of workers' health and the balancing of work and family life. In order to be adopted, they would need 394 votes before May 2009. Did not get it.